And speaking of humans, so is our Matthew Perry.
So this is what I'm going to do. If there's any riffing that you and I want to do about how Friends touched us or how Matthew Perry, how you're a fan of his. And then you told me about this clip and I found it about what he wants to be remembered for.
Yes,
So
please play
I'm
it.
going to start with that one and then we'll go to his comedic beauty. Sure. So should we just start with this clip?
Sure.
All right. Let's see if I can figure this out.
I say in the book that if I die, it would shock people, but it wouldn't surprise anybody. The best thing about me, bar none, is if somebody comes up to me and says, I can't stop drinking, can you help me? I can say yes and follow up and do it. I've said this for a long time. When I die, I don't want Friends to be the first thing that's mentioned. I want that to be the first thing mentioned. And I'm going to live the rest of my life proving that. I would like to be remembered as somebody who lived well, loved well, was a seeker, and his paramount thing is that he wants to help people. That's what I want.
There you go.
Sweet man.
Yeah.
Well, just to kind of start, I've shared this with a lot of people in the last couple of days because I read his book. I'm sure a lot of you have read his Matthew Perry's biography. I read it last year, right when it came out. And some of the things we have to understand is not only did he have addiction in his family, but when he was 12 months old, he was really colicky, maybe even before that. And one of the solutions was giving him alcohol to help him sleep, even as a baby. And I say that because he was set up for this challenge. And it's not about because his parents are horrible people or anything. It's just he already had the genetic predisposition, right. And then there were already events that were being put into place that were creating a desire for it in his body or a normalizing of it. And then you add on the kind of fame he had and the where he lived, and it just was a recipe to be really, really, in a cycle of addiction. With that said, today we don't know.
Yeah.
Like his body was beat up he was very unwell due to a lifetime of addiction. But it's funny, I was noticing today that everybody's waiting on this autopsy and toxology report as if it really matters.
That's kind of what I want to talk about.
Yeah.
Because I would be lying if I'm hoping, which is weird to say, that he had some type of cardiac arrest as opposed to he was taking drugs the day he died. So I don't want to be hypocritical, but I think it's so interesting how much attention is how, what was he doing that day? Is it just like morbid curiosity? Like, what is it about us humans that need to know? Because maybe if we know, then we feel like we can put it to bed.
Yes, it's not us.
Yeah.
Oh, he was doing drugs and drinking. Well, that's what addicts do. Yeah. Like, it's our way of being very standoffish about it. If he had a heart attack and then drowned, which it sounds like is what happened, that makes us go, yeesh, he's 54.
Yeah.
And then it feels closer to home. We always look for ways to separate ourselves from other people's traumas. Oh, you had, you smoked. Oh, you, didn't wear your seatbelt, or you didn't eat well or exercise or whatever. Then we're like, well, I do all those things, so it's not going to happen to me. It's very human. We don't need to be cruel to ourselves about it. We just need to recognize what we're doing, and that we're just trying to separate ourselves from his. And honestly, he, I think it was in 2019, it was 3 or 4 years ago, his colon exploded because he had been addicted to opioids for so long due to needing pain medication, by the way, Todd. Like, he was done drinking, and then he had an injury and then needed opioids.
Well, and it's funny, as I shared with you, I'm starting to try to make some headway in the construction industry regarding depression and suicide, because it's the second highest rate of suicide depression amongst all industries.
So you're trying to help men in that industry.
Trying to help men, and actually might even open up for women in construction too. We don't want it to be just men. And I was talking to this expert on this topic, and he's like, it's like Captain Obvious, but he's like, opioids, because in construction there's a lot of injuries, like
pain,
you're picking up a lot of heavy stuff, and these men and women get hurt.
Yeah.
And the way that they relieve themselves of that hurt, they go to the doctor and they put him on these opioids.
Yeah.
And he's like, and you and I saw Dope Sick, which is just a heart-wrenching.
And the other one. I feel like I've seen 3
there's
shows
been
about
a
the
few of them.
Sacklers. There was Dope Sick, another one, and then we're watching The Fall of the House of Usher, which is also about the Sacklers.
So, but I find so much compassion for people who accidentally get addicted to pain pills because they rolled their ankle. A soccer mom rolled her ankle and it hurts really bad, so she's on pain pills. Whereas, not that I don't have enough compassion for anybody who's addicted to any type of drug, but I could see myself accidentally falling into that because, as I understand it, it is so unbelievably innocent to start, right? I broke my ankle. I need something to be able to fall asleep, to being strung out on it. It's just crazy. It's just crazy. So
yeah, pain management. I mean, this is where all of this comes from. You know, we're not going to dive into this now, but we are going to in the future talk more about fentanyl and what's going on with that.
Yep.
And it's the same issue as far as fentanyl is used at hospitals to help people relieve their pain and to have certain surgeries and such. And then now, what's happening on the street and what's happening as far as kids having it in drugs that they don't even know that's what they're taking. Some do and some don't. Right. There's lots. Todd and I've heard so many different stories. But this is about going to our weaknesses, which is wanting to alleviate pain. And when I say weaknesses, I mean, who wants pain? I don't.
Yeah.
And so we look for things to help us not feel pain. And for some of us, it's emotional pain. And for some of us, it's physical. And then it gets combined.
So as we honor Matthew Perry, I know he had a lot of issues. So it sounds like what you're saying is it first started out with alcohol. And then did he get clean off of alcohol?
He went to rehab. He said he spent over his lifetime $6 million at different rehabs.
Oh, gosh. Jeez.
Yeah.
And then did he beat alcohol and then the opioids came in? It's been like a year since I read it, so I can't remember the exact progression, but he had done rehab a number of times. And one thing I will say that he says in his book is he felt for him it was much harder than other people. Like, not like he was a weak person, but a lot of people he talked to that were also addicts or people who were struggling with addiction, he had quite the addiction issue. Like, I would love to study his brain as far as he had a very hard time being done. And I know we can say this about a lot of people, people we know and other people in the world, in the Hollywood world. But he did eventually, there were long periods of time where he was not, dealing with addiction, but for the majority of friends, he was dealing with something. Which is so weird because he was such a high performer.
He was. But if you look at every year of Friends, Chandler looked different every year.
Physically
because of his addictions.
And I remember being like, oh my God, look how skinny he is. Yeah. But I never said, oh, what a terrible job of acting Matthew Perry just did. He still was pretty good.
When he was really, really skinny and he had the goatee, that was drugs. That was opioids. When he was a little more, I don't want to say he was overweight, but like he looked like he had gained weight in his face. There was a period of time where he was actually sober. There was also a period of time where especially at the beginning where it was alcohol.
Yeah.
And again, I don't have it fresh in my head where I can go through, because he actually goes through every season and tells you what was going on with him. He was in rehab the season that he and Monica got married, and he had to be driven from the rehab facility by a bus to the lot to film that episode.
Yeah.
And then they had to pick him back up and he had to go back to rehab.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to think about that episode because he leaves and then starts smoking. Do you remember that episode?
Vaguely.
It's just very human. But what I wanted to say about Matthew Perry and the shock of, obviously it's our first friend that, capital FRIEND, the show. He's our first friend that we've lost. And like he just said in his quote, people won't be, what did he say? They'll be surprised, but they won't be shocked or something like that. Like, he's been the most unhealthy. We've watched his, struggle with addiction. So maybe it's not that surprising to us, but it's still very sad, and it still hits us in that place. I wrote something that I'll probably put out tomorrow, the day we put this show out, that, it reminded me of